The colossal arena stretched before them like a monument to civilized violence, its crystalline walls reaching skyward in impossible spirals that defied the architectural logic of a dozen species. The Nexus Prime Coliseum was more than just a fighting pit. It was a symbol of the Galactic Federation's commitment to resolving disputes through controlled combat rather than system-wide warfare. The Zephyrian announcer's voice boomed across the massive structure, its translation implants making the alien words comprehensible to the diverse crowd of beings packed into the shimmering stands. The creature stood on a hovering platform at the arena's center, its four arms gesticulating wildly as holographic displays materialized around it, showing fighters from across known space. Welcome, citizens of the Galactic Federation, to another glorious day at the Grand Coliseum of Nexus Prime. The announcer's voice carried the practiced enthusiasm of someone who had narrated 1,000 such events. Today marks a historic occasion, the first combat evaluation of the species known as humans for consideration in our great federation. The crowd's response was mixed. Scattered cheers from the diplomatic sections mingled with skeptical chittering from species who had never heard of humanity until this moment. In the premium viewing areas, military analysts from a dozen worlds leaned forward with professional interest, while betting pools calculated odds that were universally unfavorable to the unknown species. These newcomers faced the legendary Thackeray clan champions. The announcer continued, warriors who have dominated our sacred arena for over 2 standard years. Bound by the ancient codes established 3 millennia ago, today's combat will test not just physical prowess, but the adaptability and honor that mark a true warrior species. Deep beneath the arena floor, in preparation chambers carved from the living rock of Nexus Prime itself, Captain Jake Morrison of the Human Colonial Defense Force sat in meditative silence. The chamber was deliberately austere, plain metal benches, basic lighting, and walls that had witnessed the pre-combat rituals of hundreds of species over the centuries. Morrison's hands moved with practiced precision as he wrapped cloth around his knuckles, each loop and twist a ritual older than human spaceflight. Around him, his teammates went through their own preparations with the quiet focus of professional soldiers. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez performed stretching exercises that would have impressed a gymnast, her movements fluid and controlled as she prepared joints and muscles for combat. 12 years in the Colonial Marines had taught her that flexibility often mattered more than strength when facing unknown opponents. Sergeant Tom Bradley sat against the far wall, methodically going through breathing exercises that slowed his heart rate while keeping his reflexes sharp. His scarred knuckles told the story of a man who had learned to fight in places where surrender wasn't an option. Corporal Alex Kim knelt in a corner, his eyes closed in what looked like meditation but was actually tactical visualization. In his mind, he was running through dozens of possible scenarios, each one a chess game played with bone and sinew. "Remind me again why we agreed to this?" Rodriguez asked, rolling her shoulders to test her range of motion. Morrison looked up from his hand wrapping, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Because the Federation Council thinks humans are too primitive for full membership. They want to see how we handle ourselves in civilized combat." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on any of them. The Galactic Federation, in its wisdom, had banned all weapons from arena combat centuries earlier. Too many species had developed increasingly destructive technologies, turning what was meant to be ritualized combat into exercises in mutual annihilation. Blades, plasma rifles, energy shields, projectile weapons, even simple clubs, all forbidden. Combat was now limited to what the Federation termed natural biological capabilities, and the most basic of tools. What the alien lawmakers hadn't considered was that for humans, their hands were weapons. 10,000 years of martial evolution had turned the human body into a precision instrument of controlled violence. "The rules still seem insane to me," Bradley muttered, testing the flexibility of his wrapped hands. "No weapons, but claws and natural armor are perfectly fine. It's like they designed this whole system around everything except us." "That's because they did," Kim said without opening his eyes. "Every species that made it to the stars did so by being the apex predator on their homeworld. Big teeth, natural weapons, poison, armor. Something that made them dominant through biological superiority." "And humans?" Rodriguez asked, though she already knew the answer. Humans made it to the stars by learning to kill things bigger, faster, and stronger than we were, Morrison said quietly. We're the only species in the galaxy that had to earn our place at the top of the food chain. A sound like metallic rainfall announced the arrival of their escort. A Caraxian guard entered the chamber, its 7-foot frame resembling a bipedal praying mantis crafted from living metal. Its compound eyes swept over the humans with the professional assessment of someone who had seen hundreds of species prepare for combat. Humans, the guard said, its translator rendering its clicks and chirps into flat, mechanical galactic standard. You fight the Thackeray clan champions. They have won 47 consecutive matches across 6 different species classifications. Bradley looked up and grinned, the expression somehow managing to be both friendly and predatory. 47? That's cute. What's the record? The guard's head tilted in what might have been confusion. In all its years working the arena, escorting nervous warriors to what many considered their doom, it had never heard such casual confidence from a species facing the Thackeray. These beings were legendary. Their natural carapaces could deflect most physical attacks. Their razor-sharp claws could slice through steel plating, and their hunting instincts had been honed over millions of years of evolution. The record, the guard said slowly, is held by the Thackeray themselves. 237 consecutive victories before the current champions took their place. Ha! Morrison said, standing and testing his range of motion. Well, I guess every streak has to end sometime. The arena awaits, the guard announced, apparently deciding that either these humans were supremely confident or completely insane. In its experience, the difference was usually academic. As they walked through the tunnel toward the arena floor, their footsteps echoing off ancient stone, Kim asked the question that had become their traditional pre-combat ritual. Rules reminder? Morrison recited the regulations they had memorized months earlier. No weapons of any kind. No external tools beyond basic clothing. No permanent maiming or intentional killing. Fight continues until surrender, unconsciousness, or intervention by arena medical staff. He paused, then added with dry humor, "Oh, and try not to kill anyone. Apparently it's bad for diplomatic relations." The tunnel began to brighten as they approached the arena entrance, and the sound of the crowd grew from a distant rumble to a roar that seemed to make the very walls vibrate. They could feel the weight of nearly 1,000,000 pairs of eyes waiting to judge not just their combat skills, but the worthiness of their entire species. As they emerged into the blinding light of the arena, Morrison looked at his team one final time. They had trained for this moment for months, studying every available recording of Thackeray combat techniques, analyzing their movements, their tactics, their weaknesses. But more importantly, they had been preparing for this their entire lives. Every human was a weapon waiting to be deployed. The Luminarch referee pulsed with anticipatory energy, its crystalline form catching and reflecting the arena lights like a living prism. Begin! The moment the Luminarch's light shifted to green, the arena transformed from a place of spectacle into a laboratory of violence. The Thackeray moved with the coordinated precision of pack hunters, their movements fluid and purposeful as they spread across the sandy floor. War Master Zethkar took point, his massive frame casting a shadow across Morrison as he charged with the confidence of a predator that had never known defeat. His claws extended to their full length, obsidian-sharp talons that could pierce starship hull plating. Behind him, his clanmates moved to flank positions with practiced efficiency. The crowd held its collective breath. This was how every arena match began, with the Thackeray demonstrating why they were the galaxy's most feared warriors. Morrison stood perfectly still until Zethkar was 3 steps away. In the VIP section, Ambassador Veltar leaned forward, expecting to witness the brief, educational destruction of human overconfidence. Then Morrison moved. In a motion so fluid it seemed almost casual, he stepped inside Zethkar's guard, caught the War Master's extended arm, and used the alien's own momentum against him. The 8-foot Thackeray warrior suddenly found himself airborne, flying in a perfect arc that ended with his back slamming into the arena wall with a sound like a starship hull buckling. The silence that followed was absolute. Nearly 1,000,000 beings from across the galaxy sat in stunned quiet, trying to process what they had just witnessed. In 3,000 years of arena combat, nothing like this had ever happened in the opening seconds of a match. What was that technique? Ambassador Veltar stammered, his compound eyes fixed on the crater in the wall where Zethkar had impacted. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the human cultural attaché, maintained her diplomatic composure despite the urge to pump her fist in the air. I believe that was a basic hip toss, Ambassador, though it might technically qualify as an ogoshi in judo terminology. Judo? The Caraxian diplomat's translator seemed to struggle with the unfamiliar word. The gentle way, Dr. Vasquez explained, her tone carefully neutral. One of humanity's martial arts. It focuses on using an opponent's force against them rather than meeting strength with strength. In the arena, the other three humans had engaged their opponents, and each was demonstrating a completely different approach to combat. Lieutenant Rodriguez faced Bladesinger Krixta, the only female member of the Thackeray clan and arguably their most vicious fighter. Krixta's claws had earned their name by literally singing through the air as they sliced toward their targets. She attacked with an overhead double strike that should have ended the fight immediately. Rodriguez moved like liquid mercury, flowing around the attack and striking back with surgical precision. Her elbow found the exact junction between carapace segments that 12 years of colonial marine training had taught her to identify in any arthropod anatomy. The crack that echoed across the arena was audible even in the highest seats. Impossible, the Zephyrian announcer whispered into his amplifier, his forearms trembling with excitement. The human female has damaged Thackeray natural armor. How did she know precisely where to strike? What the announcer couldn't understand was that Rodriguez didn't need to know Thackeray anatomy specifically. She understood universal principles, how exoskeletons flexed, where stress points developed, how to apply force perpendicular to armor plates to cause maximum structural damage. Her strike hadn't been lucky. It had been inevitable. On the opposite side of the arena, Sergeant Bradley was giving Hunter Prime Vashkeo a lesson in why humans had conquered Earth despite being soft, slow, and essentially defenseless by most galactic standards. Vashkeo, who had expected to overwhelm his opponent through superior reach and raw power, found himself swinging at empty air. Bradley moved with the controlled aggression of a master boxer, his feet carrying him in and out of range with clockwork precision. When Vashkeo overcommit to a powerful strike, Bradley was already inside his guard, delivering a combination that had been refined in rings and streets across human space for millennia. Left hook to the thorax junction, precisely where the Thackeray's breathing apparatus connected to his main body cavity. Right cross to the head, targeting the cluster of sensory organs that served as eyes. Uppercut to the mandible joint, disrupting the alien's ability to coordinate his natural weapons. Each blow was calculated not just for damage, but for systemic disruption. Vashkeo staggered backward, his nervous system struggling to process attacks that targeted vulnerabilities his species had never needed to defend against. In the center of the arena, Corporal Kim was demonstrating perhaps the most alien concept of all to the watching crowd. He was fighting while lying on his back. Shadowclaw Mordex was the technical master of the Thackeray clan, known for his speed and precision. He had studied the combat techniques of dozens of species and adapted his style to counter each one. What he had never encountered was an opponent who voluntarily gave up the advantage of standing position. Kim's sweep had taken Mordex's legs out from under him, and now the human was controlling the much larger alien using nothing but leverage and positioning. The Thackeray thrashed against holds that seemed impossible. How could a creature half his size prevent him from moving? Submission grappling, Dr. Vasquez explained to the increasingly agitated diplomatic section. It's based on the principle that technique and mechanical advantage can overcome virtually any disparity in size or strength. But the human has no weapons, protested General Korthax of the Hegemony Defense Forces. How can he control a Thackeray warrior using only his limbs? General, Dr. Vasquez replied, human limbs are weapons. We've spent 10,000 years learning to use them that way. Kim's hold tightened incrementally. He had control of Mordex's arm and was applying steady pressure to the joint in a way that would cause permanent damage if the alien didn't acknowledge defeat. It was a mathematical certainty, Either Mordex would submit or his arm would be destroyed. Across the arena, Morrison had helped Zethkar to his feet. The War Master was conscious but clearly struggling to process what had happened to him. How? Zethkar asked in heavily accented galactic standard, his translator struggling with concepts his species had no words for. Your species has no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no armor plating, no poison sacs. How do you fight with such precision? Morrison looked down at his hands, soft, pink, five-fingered appendages that most species in the galaxy considered laughably inadequate for combat. Then he looked back at the warrior who had dominated the arena for 2 years. Our hands aren't weapons, War Master, Morrison said with genuine respect. They're tools. And humans have spent our entire evolutionary history learning to use tools to overcome bigger, stronger, faster predators. The Luminarch referee pulsed yellow. A timeout called due to the unprecedented nature of what was occurring. In 3 millennia of arena combat, no species had ever so completely reversed expectations in the opening moments of a match. In the diplomatic section, emergency communications were being sent to military commands across the galaxy. Xenobiologists were frantically recalculating their assessments of human capabilities. Cultural attaches were demanding immediate briefings on human tool use concepts. And in the arena, for humans stood ready to continue a demonstration that would fundamentally alter how the galaxy understood the relationship between evolution, technology, and warfare. The galaxy had been watching what they thought was a mismatch. They were beginning to realize they were witnessing a revolution. The 7-minute timeout that followed was perhaps the most politically significant pause in galactic history. Arena medical staff rushed onto the sandy floor, their scanners confirming what the crowd could barely believe. While the Thrakkery warriors were injured, none were in mortal danger. The humans had demonstrated complete control over the level of damage they inflicted. In the diplomatic section, the reaction was considerably more volatile. This changes nothing, General Korthax of the Hegemony Defense Forces declared, though his voice carried less conviction than his words. Surprise tactics and beginner's luck. The humans cannot possibly maintain this level of performance. Dr. Vasquez turned in her seat to face the assembled military commanders, her expression professionally neutral despite the satisfaction burning in her chest. General, with respect, what you just witnessed wasn't luck. It was the culmination of approximately 10,000 years of human martial development. 10,000 years? Professor Elon Kess, the Federation's leading expert on primitive species development, leaned forward with sudden interest. Your species has been developing combat techniques for that long? Professor, humans have been fighting for survival since before we developed agriculture. Every technique you just saw has been tested, refined, and passed down through hundreds of generations. Admiral Threx of the Stellar Navy pulled up tactical displays on his personal viewer, rapidly analyzing the combat footage frame by frame. The precision of their strikes suggests extensive anatomical knowledge. How did they know exactly where to target Thrakkery physiology? They didn't, Dr. Vasquez replied, causing several delegates to turn in confusion. They understand universal biomechanical principles. Joint mechanics, leverage points, structural vulnerabilities. These concepts apply to any articulated anatomy. The Luminarch referee pulsed back to its combat green, resuming the match that had already redefined galactic understanding of human capabilities. This time, the Thrakkery approached with the wariness of predators who had learned to respect their prey. They spread into a coordinated formation that had served them well against dozens of other species. A hunting pattern evolved over millions of years of apex predation. But humans had been countering coordinated predators since they first picked up sticks to defend cave entrances. Morrison's voice cut across the arena in what sounded like tactical gibberish to most listeners. Diamond formation, rotating lead, maintain 2-meter spacing, watch for flanking attempts. The response was immediate and devastating. The 4 humans moved like components of a single organism, each position calculated to provide maximum coverage while maintaining tactical flexibility. When Zethkar attempted to charge Morrison again, Rodriguez was already in position to intercept, her movement so precisely timed that it appeared choreographed. When Krixta tried to exploit what seemed like an opening in Kim's defense, Bradley materialized in her path as if he had known her intention before she did. Squad tactics, Admiral Threx observed, his professional admiration overriding his species' loyalty. They're not fighting as individuals competing for glory. They're operating as a coordinated military unit. Humans are persistence predators, Dr. Vasquez explained to the rapidly growing crowd of observers around her seat. We evolved to hunt in groups, to coordinate our efforts, and to adapt our strategies in real time based on changing conditions. What followed was a masterpiece of applied combat science. Rodriguez demonstrated the devastating efficiency of Muay Thai, using her knees and elbows to target the precise gaps in Krixta's carapace that her earlier strikes had identified. Each impact was calculated not just for immediate damage, but for cumulative effect, strikes that would degrade the alien's mobility and coordination over time. She's conducting systematic structural analysis, Professor Kess breathed, watching Rodriguez methodically work through what appeared to be a predetermined sequence of attacks. Each strike provides data about the enemy's defensive capabilities. Bradley showcased why boxing had been called the sweet science for over a century. His footwork was a geometry lesson in practical application, keeping him in perfect position to deliver maximum force while minimizing his exposure to counterattacks. Every combination was a study in efficiency, no wasted motion, no unnecessary exposure, each punch flowing naturally into the next. Observe the predictive positioning, Admiral Threx pointed out to his aide. He's not reacting to his opponent's movements. He's anticipating them based on biomechanical analysis. Kim had transitioned beyond simple grappling into what appeared to be a fluid demonstration of applied physics. He redirected Mordex's attacks using the alien's own momentum, turning the Thackeray's superior mass into a liability. Every movement demonstrated an intuitive understanding of leverage, momentum, and force multiplication that seemed almost supernatural to species that relied primarily on brute strength. But it was Morrison who provided the most educational display for the galaxy's military observers. Warmaster Zethkar was a veteran of over 100 arena battles, a tactical genius who had studied the combat methods of 30 different species and developed countermeasures for each. He approached this second engagement with the calculated precision of a master strategist. He had never encountered anything like Krav Maga. Morrison's strikes targeted nerve clusters, pressure points, and structural weaknesses with the methodical precision of someone who understood that fighting wasn't a sport or a display of honor. It was problem-solving under extreme pressure. When Zethkar attempted to use his reach advantage, Morrison closed the distance and fought in the clinch where his knowledge of anatomy gave him every possible edge. "Stop analyzing their individual techniques," Professor Kess called out suddenly, his voice cutting through the tactical discussions around him. "Look at the bigger picture." The assembled observers shifted their attention from individual combat analysis to the overall flow of the engagement. "They're not trying to win quickly," Kess continued, his antennae twitching with growing alarm. "They're experimenting." He was absolutely correct. The humans were systematically testing different approaches, methodically cataloging how Thackeray anatomy responded to various types of force and pressure. Each engagement was producing data that was immediately shared and incorporated into their evolving tactical framework. "Combat research," Admiral Threx said quietly, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been respect or might have been fear. "They're conducting live battlefield research on how to fight our species." Morrison landed a precise strike that temporarily paralyzed Zethkar's left arm, then immediately called out, "Nerve cluster at the third carapace junction, 45 degrees from center line. Disrupts motor control for approximately 30 seconds. Rodriguez nodded and immediately applied the technique to her own opponent, dropping Krixta to one knee with surgical precision. "They're sharing tactical intelligence in real time," General Korthax observed, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by professional assessment. "Every discovery immediately becomes available to the entire team." The transformation in the arena's atmosphere was palpable. What had begun as an exhibition of superior alien warriors dominating primitive newcomers had become a systematic demonstration of why humans had conquered a planet full of creatures bigger, stronger, and better armed than they were. "The match is over," Professor Kess announced quietly to the diplomatic section. The humans are simply deciding how they want it to end. As if hearing his words, Morrison caught Zethkar in a hold that immobilized the War Master completely. Rodriguez had Krixta in a similar position. Bradley had battered his opponent into near unconsciousness. And Kim had achieved a submission hold so complete that Mordex couldn't move without risking serious injury. The four humans looked at each other across the arena, then at the diplomatic section. They weren't even breathing hard. "Do you yield?" Morrison asked Zethkar formally. The War Master, who had never surrendered in his life, looked around at his defeated clanmates, then up at the crowd that had fallen into complete silence. "I yield," he said. The arena erupted. The aftermath of the match created a diplomatic earthquake that rippled across the galaxy with the force of a collapsing star. Medical teams rushed to tend to the Thrakkery warriors, whose injuries had been precisely calibrated, serious enough to demonstrate that the humans could have inflicted catastrophic damage if they had chosen to, but controlled enough to ensure complete recovery within standard weeks. The real casualties were in the diplomatic section, where 3,000 years of carefully constructed assumptions about species hierarchy and military capability had just been obliterated in 12 minutes of controlled violence. Emergency communications flooded subspace channels as every major power in the galaxy simultaneously realized that their intelligence assessments of humanity had been fundamentally, catastrophically wrong. "Request immediate full tactical evaluation of human military capabilities," General Korthax dictated to his aide, his earlier skepticism replaced by the urgent pragmatism of a professional soldier. "Previous intelligence reports are to be considered completely unreliable. Priority Alpha classification." Ambassador Veltar was conducting a similar conversation with the Caraxian High Command, his compound eyes still fixed on the arena where humans were demonstrating combat techniques to their former opponents. "No, Supreme Commander, I am not engaging in hyperbole. They defeated the Thrakkery clan champions in under 12 minutes using nothing but their natural physiology. Yes, sir, the same Thrakkery who have dominated galactic arena combat for over 2 years." The Zephyrian announcer had fallen completely silent, his forearms trembling as he watched medical technicians confirm that the legendary warriors who had seemed invincible mere hours ago were now receiving lessons in combat technique from the species they had expected to easily defeat. Dr. Vasquez finally allowed herself to lean back in her chair, the careful diplomatic composure she had maintained for months giving way to a moment of quiet satisfaction. The last 6 months of meticulous preparation, careful cultural analysis, and strategic positioning had led to this singular moment. Not just a demonstration of human fighting ability, but a complete paradigm shift in how the galaxy understood the relationship between evolution, technology, and warfare. Professor Kess approached her observation platform, his antennae drooping with what appeared to be scientific embarrassment. "Dr. Vasquez, I owe your species a formal apology. Our comprehensive xenobiology assessments classified humans as physically unremarkable with limited combat potential. We were profoundly incorrect. With respect, Professor, your assessments were technically accurate," Vasquez replied, her tone carefully measured. "Humans are physically unremarkable by galactic standards. We're not the strongest, fastest, most durable, or best-armed species in known space." "Then how?" Professor Kess gestured helplessly toward the arena, where Morrison was helping Zethkar practice a joint lock that the War Master was clearly struggling to understand. "Because we learned to fight anyway," Vasquez said simply. "Every species in the galaxy that achieved spaceflight did so by being apex predators on their homeworld. You developed superior natural weapons, better armor, enhanced sensory capabilities, or some other evolutionary advantage that made you dominant. Humans achieved spaceflight despite being prey animals for most of our evolutionary history." The implications of this statement rippled through the assembled diplomats like a shock wave. Prey animals? Admiral Threx had joined the conversation, his tactical mind clearly wrestling with concepts that challenged everything he understood about species development. "Admiral, on Earth, humans weren't the dominant predator until very recently in evolutionary terms. For millions of years, we were hunted by creatures that were faster, stronger, and better armed than we were. We survived by developing something that no other species needed, the ability to outthink, outadapt, and outcooperate anything that tried to kill us. On the arena floor, an unprecedented scene was unfolding. Kim was explaining the mechanics of leverage and joint manipulation to Mordex, using anatomical diagrams projected from his personal communicator. The Thrakkery warrior listened with the intense focus of someone who had just discovered that everything he thought he knew about combat was merely the foundation for deeper understanding. "They're teaching them?" Admiral Threx's voice carried a note of complete bewilderment. "Of course they are," Vasquez replied. "Humans share knowledge. It's our primary survival strategy and has been for our entire evolutionary history." Rodriguez was demonstrating proper defensive positioning to Krixta, showing the Thrakkery warrior how to protect her carapace weak points while maintaining offensive capability. Her explanation was patient, methodical, and completely at odds with traditional post-combat behavior between former enemies. Bradley was engaged in what appeared to be a technical discussion with his former opponent about the biomechanics of striking, using hand gestures to demonstrate angles of attack and the physics of force transfer through different types of armor. "This is unprecedented in galactic military history," breathed Ambassador Veltar. "Victorious warriors traditionally assert dominance over the defeated. They're improving their opponent's capabilities." "Ambassador," Vasquez said, turning to address the growing crowd of observers, "may I ask how your species achieved spaceflight?" "We developed superior military technology and conquered those who opposed our expansion," Veltar replied automatically. "And you, General Korthax?" "The hegemony eliminated competing species on our homeworld through superior force projection, then expanded to the stars when no further opposition existed." Vasquez nodded, having expected these responses. Humans achieved spaceflight through cooperation. Every major breakthrough in our technological development came from sharing knowledge, building upon the discoveries of others, and adapting successful innovations across different applications. We didn't eliminate our competition, we made them partners. The Luminarch referee pulsed a soft blue, indicating that official documentation was being recorded and transmitted. The match results would be distributed to every world in the Federation within hours, along with complete tactical analysis and cultural assessment updates. The implications of this demonstration extend far beyond military capability assessment, Professor Kess said, his scientific mind clearly racing through possibilities. If humans can adapt their combat techniques to accommodate alien physiology in real time, what other applications might this adaptability have? "Professor," Dr. Vasquez said, her diplomatic mask slipping just enough to reveal the satisfaction beneath. "Humans have been preparing for this moment for 3 centuries. Since we first learned that intelligent life existed beyond our solar system, we've been studying, training, and adapting, not to conquer, but to belong." In the arena, the Thrakkery warriors were being escorted toward the medical facilities, but the procession paused as War Master Zethkar approached the human team. The crowd fell silent as the legendary warrior faced the beings who had just redefined his understanding of combat. "Your species fights with honor and wisdom," he said in carefully practiced galactic standard, his voice carrying across the arena through ambient pickups. "The Thrakkery clan would consider it a privilege to train alongside humans and learn from your tactical innovations." Morrison's response was immediate and respectful. "The honor would be ours, War Master. We look forward to learning from your experience as well." As the arena began to empty, emergency sessions were being convened across the galaxy. The Warriors' Council would need immediate reconvening. Military assessment protocols required complete revision. Trade agreements would need renegotiation to account for humanity's demonstrated capabilities. But perhaps most importantly, the question of humanity's readiness for full Federation membership had been answered so definitively that formal proceedings were already being accelerated. "Dr. Vasquez," Admiral Threx said as the diplomatic section prepared to disperse, "I believe we need to schedule some very comprehensive discussions about human integration into Federation defense structures." "Admiral," she replied, "I was very much hoping you would say that." 3 days after the arena match, the political landscape of the Galactic Federation had undergone the most dramatic transformation in its recorded history. The combat footage had achieved unprecedented distribution, Over 12 billion views across Federation networks within the first 48 hours, with analysis and commentary flooding every major news platform in known space. Captain Morrison stood in the expansive briefing room of the human embassy on Nexus Prime, a facility that had been hastily upgraded from a modest cultural exchange office to accommodate the diplomatic revolution that 4 humans had inadvertently triggered. The chamber's curved walls displayed real-time galactic communication feeds, each one carrying news of humanity's arena demonstration to distant worlds. Facing him was an assembly of alien dignitaries that would have been politically impossible to convene just a week earlier. Representatives from 17 different species had requested emergency meetings to discuss what Federation bureaucrats were carefully terming reassessment of human species strategic partnerships. The Hegemony Defense Forces formally request permission to establish joint training protocols with human military institutions, General Korthax announced, his tone carrying a respect that had been completely absent during their first meeting. Behind him, his aide was frantically taking notes on a quantum data pad that seemed barely able to keep pace with the requests being made. The Caraxian Military Academy proposes immediate implementation of student and instructor exchange programs with human combat training facilities, Ambassador Veltar added, his compound eyes focused intently on Morrison. Our tactical analysis suggests that human methodologies could revolutionize our approach to asymmetric warfare. The Thackeray Clan Council has voted unanimously, unprecedented in our history, to propose joint training exercises and shared tactical development programs, War Master Zethkar stated from his position at the conference table. His injuries from the arena were healing well, but the real transformation was in his perspective on interspecies cooperation. Our warriors have never encountered teaching methods that could improve combat effectiveness so rapidly. Dr. Vasquez exchanged meaningful glances with Morrison. Their strategic planning sessions over the past months had included optimistic projections for Federation response, but the actual scope and speed of the diplomatic shift exceeded even their most ambitious scenarios. We deeply appreciate the interest from all of your peoples. Morrison began with practiced diplomatic caution. However, I believe there may be some fundamental misconceptions about what you witnessed in the arena. The room fell into expectant silence, with several delegates activating personal recording devices. What we demonstrated wasn't particularly advanced by human military standards. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Sergeant Bradley, Corporal Kim, and I represent competent but standard infantry personnel. In human space, there are millions of individuals with similar or superior combat capabilities. Millions. Professor Kessa's voice carried an edge of disbelief that he couldn't quite suppress. You're suggesting that what we observed represents baseline human military competency? Professor, every branch of human military service includes hand-to-hand combat as fundamental training. Additionally, millions of civilian humans study martial arts for recreational purposes, physical fitness, and personal development. The techniques demonstrated in the arena are taught in educational institutions, community centers, and neighborhood training facilities across human-controlled space. The implications of this revelation created visible reactions throughout the room. Several delegates began rapid consultations with their aides, while others immediately activated emergency communication channels to their respective homeworlds. Lieutenant Rodriguez stepped forward with Morrison's permission. Distinguished delegates, what the arena demonstration showed you was basic human military combatives combined with recreational martial arts and standard small unit tactics. We represent infantry personnel, not special operations forces. We're not even considered the most skilled fighters aboard our own vessel. Your species mass-produces warriors of this caliber? Admiral Threx asked, his tactical mind clearly struggling to process the strategic implications. Admiral, Sergeant Bradley interjected respectfully. With due respect, we're not warriors in the traditional sense. We're Marines, trained to fight when necessary, but combat represents just one aspect of our duties. Human military personnel are also engineers, medical technicians, communication specialists, diplomats, and peacekeepers. Combat skills are considered fundamental education, not specialized training. Corporal Kim added, the fighting techniques we demonstrated have been developed over thousands of years by civilians, not soldiers. Farmers defending their land, merchants protecting their goods, scholars developing physical disciplines for mental improvement. These arts emerged from necessity and philosophy, not military doctrine. This is, Ambassador Veltar began, then paused, his translator apparently struggling to find appropriate terms for his thoughts. This is why humanity should be admitted to full Federation membership with immediate effect, declared a commanding voice from the chamber entrance. Every being in the room turned to see Chancellor Rixandra of the Federation Council, flanked by her elite security detail. The Chancellor was among the most powerful individuals in known space, and her unannounced arrival indicated that human integration had escalated to the highest levels of galactic government. Chancellor, Dr. Vasquez said, rising respectfully along with everyone else in the room. We weren't expecting. Dr. Vasquez, the political situation has accelerated beyond conventional diplomatic timelines. 3 species have formally requested human military advisors for ongoing conflicts. 7 more have submitted proposals for combat training partnerships. The hegemony has drafted joint defense initiatives, and the Caraxian Assembly has suggested that humans represent ideal candidates for elite guard consideration. She paused, her complex optical array scanning each human present with an intensity that suggested rapid data analysis. More critically, our intelligence services have completed comprehensive analysis of the arena footage. Your team's performance indicates tactical capabilities that could fundamentally alter the balance of power in several current military engagements. Morrison maintained his diplomatic composure while internally calculating rapidly. The elite guard represented the Federation's most exclusive military organization, responsible for protecting member species from existential threats. Admission required unanimous consent from all member species, something that had never been granted to any species so soon after initial contact, much less during their probationary membership period. Chancellor, humanity is honored by this consideration, but we're still adapting to basic Federation membership protocols. Perhaps we should focus on Captain Morrison. I'm afraid circumstances are forcing acceleration beyond cautious diplomatic progression. Chancellor Rixandra activated a holographic star chart showing the galaxy's outer rim territories, with several sectors marked in ominous red indicators. We've received confirmed intelligence that the Void Hunters are mobilizing for another major incursion. The chamber's temperature seemed to drop several degrees at the mention of that name. The Void Hunters represented the Federation's greatest existential nightmare, a nomadic species that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space and cosmic debris in their wake. Their previous incursion had cost over 3 billion lives and required the combined military might of the entire Federation to repel. Our military analysts estimate approximately 6 standard months before they probe our defensive perimeters again. Previous encounters indicate they've been systematically studying our tactics and developing comprehensive countermeasures to our standard military doctrines. She focused her attention directly on the human team. What you demonstrated in the arena represents precisely the capabilities we require against an enemy that learns and evolves. Your performance showed not just superior fighting techniques, but real-time tactical adaptation, instantaneous intelligence sharing, and the ability to develop innovative strategies during active combat engagements. War Master Zethkar spoke into the heavy silence that followed. The Thrakari have engaged the Void Hunters in 2 previous encounters. Both times we were systematically defeated because they adapted to our fighting methodologies faster than we could modify our approaches. But what the humans accomplished against my clan, learning our weaknesses and sharing that knowledge instantly across their entire unit, represents exactly the tactical flexibility needed against adaptive enemies. Dr. Vasquez, the Chancellor continued, I'm formally requesting that humanity consider immediate integration into Federation defense structures. Not as junior partners or probationary members, but as tactical specialists with full authority to implement revolutionary combat doctrines. Dr. Vasquez exchanged glances with Morrison, who provided an almost imperceptible nod of confirmation. Chancellor, will need to consult with Earth Command and the Colonial Defense Council, but I believe humanity would be profoundly honored to serve the Federation in this capacity. As the meeting continued into detailed strategic planning, none of the participants could have predicted that within 6 months, Human tactical innovations would not only save the Federation but fundamentally reshape how every species in the galaxy approached warfare, cooperation, and survival itself. The arena match had been merely the opening move in a much larger game. 6 months after the arena demonstration that had redefined galactic politics, Captain Morrison stood on the command bridge of the Federation dreadnought Nexus Defiant, watching long-range sensor arrays track the approaching nightmare that had haunted civilized space for millennia. The Void Hunter fleet moved through the cosmos like a plague of darkness, their vessels absorbing light and energy with such efficiency that they appeared as mobile holes in the fabric of space itself. The bridge around him represented everything the Federation had learned about interspecies cooperation since the arena match. Caraxian sensor specialists worked alongside Zephyrian navigation officers, while Thrakkery tactical analysts coordinated with human strategic planners. The integration that had begun as a desperate military necessity had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. Estimated fleet composition and strength? Morrison asked Lieutenant Commander Velnash, the four-armed Zephyrian who had become his primary sensor coordination officer. Sir, preliminary scans indicate 47 capital-class vessels, approximately 300 escort ships, and... Velnash paused, his primary arms manipulating controls while his secondary arms cross-referenced data streams. Captain, we're detecting something that defies previous intelligence. They appear to have integrated vessels that match Federation design specifications. Morrison felt ice form in his veins. They're using our own technology against us. More concerning than simple technological appropriation, Captain, reported Dr. Elena Petrov, the human xenotechnology specialist who had joined the fleet as part of the unprecedented scientific cooperation initiative. Intelligence analysis suggests they've been systematically capturing and studying Federation vessels for the past decade. They're not just using our technology. They've been improving it and adapting it for their specific tactical doctrines. The past 6 months had transformed not just human Federation relations, but the entire structure of galactic military cooperation. After the arena demonstration, humanity had been fast-tracked through every level of military integration with a speed that had shattered bureaucratic precedent. Human tactical advisors were now embedded with forces from dozens of species, and human combat methodologies had been adapted for use by non-human physiology across the Federation. More importantly, humans had introduced concepts that no other species had considered possible: real-time tactical adaptation, cross-species combat integration, and the revolutionary idea that diversity of approach could be more valuable than uniformity of doctrine. Status report from all battle groups, Morrison commanded, his voice carrying across a bridge that housed representatives from 8 different species. Battle Group Alpha reports full readiness, Caraxian heavy cruiser formations with integrated human tactical coordination teams. Came the immediate response from the communications station, manned by a crystalline entity whose natural quantum processing capabilities had proven invaluable for managing multi-species fleet communications. Battle Group Beta standing by for deployment, Thrakkery assault squadrons with embedded human Thrakkery integration teams utilizing hybrid combat doctrines. Battle Group Gamma prepared for engagement, mixed species fast attack formations operating under human adaptive coordination protocols. What the Federation had discovered over the intervening months was that humans didn't merely bring individual fighting skills to military engagements. They brought something far more transformative: the ability to make other species more effective than they had ever been operating independently, while simultaneously becoming more effective themselves through the integration. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from her position at the Tactical Analysis Station, where she worked alongside a Thrakkery strategic specialist and a Caraxian weapons coordination expert. We're receiving final intelligence briefings from our deep reconnaissance units. The holographic display updated to show detailed tactical scans of the approaching Void Hunter fleet. Morrison studied the information with growing concern, his mind automatically analyzing formation patterns, movement vectors, and strategic implications. They've adapted, he said quietly, his observation immediately drawing attention from every officer on the bridge. Examine their formation structure. They're not employing the same massed assault tactics that characterized previous incursions. Sir? Asked Commander Velthak, the Caraxian Fleet Coordination Specialist whose compound eyes could process multiple data streams simultaneously. Previous engagements showed them relying on overwhelming firepower applied through concentrated formations and superior individual vessel capabilities. This time, they're deploying small unit tactics, distributed command structures, adaptive formation patterns. Morrison paused as a terrible realization crystallized in his mind. They're implementing human tactical innovations. The implications struck the bridge crew like a physical blow. If the Void Hunters had been systematically studying Federation combat recordings, which their intelligence indicated they had, then they would have analyzed not just the arena match but every subsequent engagement that had featured human tactical doctrine. "Sir," Dr. Petrov said urgently, her scientific mind racing through logical conclusions, "if they've successfully incorporated human tactical methodologies into their strategic framework, then everything we've prepared and trained for over the past 6 months will be anticipated and countered," Morrison finished grimly. "They'll have developed specific countermeasures for our countermeasures." A new voice joined the tactical discussion as War Master Zethkar entered the bridge, his carapace bearing the distinctive insignia of the Federation Elite Guard, a position he had earned through months of intensive training with human forces and the development of hybrid tactics that combined Thackeray instinctual aggression with human adaptive methodologies. "Then we'll implement something they cannot possibly anticipate," Zethkar declared, his voice carrying the confidence of a warrior who had learned that adaptation was more valuable than tradition. "War Master," Morrison acknowledged, "what do you propose?" "Something no species in galactic history has ever attempted. Something so unprecedented that even if they have studied every battle, every tactic, every strategic innovation in Federation records, they will have no framework for understanding or countering it." Zethkar activated his personal tactical display, projecting a formation structure that made several bridge officers emit sounds of amazement and alarm in their respective languages. "Complete species integration," Commander Velthak said, his voice carrying notes of awe and apprehension. "Not just tactical coordination or communication protocols. Actual mixed-species combat units operating as unified organisms. Human Thackeray assault teams supported by Caraxian heavy weapons specialists, with Zephyrian pilots providing close air support and crystalline entities handling real-time battlefield communication," Zethkar confirmed. Each individual unit would combine the natural evolutionary advantages of multiple species under unified tactical command implementing human adaptive doctrine. "The logistical complexity alone," Dr. Petrov began, her scientific mind automatically calculating the variables involved, "has been systematically worked out through months of integration exercises," Morrison interrupted, his tactical mind racing through possibilities and implications. "We've been conducting interspecies training protocols for 6 months. The question isn't whether we can implement this. It's whether we can do it under real combat conditions against an enemy that's specifically prepared to counter our known capabilities." "Captain," Rodriguez reported, "incoming priority communications from all battle group commanders. They're independently reporting similar tactical proposals from their embedded human advisory teams." Morrison looked around the bridge at representatives of multiple species, all waiting for his decision. 6 months ago, he had been a colonial marine assigned to what everyone had expected would be a routine diplomatic demonstration in an alien arena. Now he was effectively commanding the largest integrated military force in galactic history, facing an enemy that represented an existential threat to every form of intelligent life in known space. "Transmit to all vessels," Morrison ordered, his voice carrying the weight of species survival. "Operation Unity is authorized for immediate implementation. All ships are to execute full species integration protocols. We're about to show the Void Hunters what happens when the galaxy stops fighting as separate species and starts fighting as one." "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving priority transmissions from the Void Hunter fleet." The main display shifted to show an incoming signal from the enemy vessels. The image that materialized was nightmarish, a being composed of what appeared to be void itself, with features that caused physical discomfort to observe directly and seemed to absorb light from the bridge's illumination systems. "Federation forces." The entity spoke in a voice like collapsing stars and dying worlds. We have systematically studied your tactical innovations. We have analyzed your strategic adaptations. We have incorporated and improved upon your most advanced combat methodologies. Surrender immediately, and your extinction will be swift. Morrison stepped forward, directly addressing the transmission with the confidence of someone who had learned that the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't superior technology or evolutionary advantage. It was the willingness to grow beyond what anyone thought possible. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Federation Defense Force. We've received your message and conducted our own analysis. He gestured toward the tactical display, which now showed the completely integrated Federation fleet formations, something that had never existed in galactic history until this moment. Here's our response. We don't surrender. We don't retreat. And we certainly don't fight the same way twice. The transmission cut off abruptly. All ships report complete readiness for Operation Unity, Rodriguez announced, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Morrison looked out at the approaching Void Hunter fleet, then at the unprecedented coalition of species preparing to defend not just their homes, but their right to exist as free civilizations. Then let's show them what unity really means. The battle began unlike any in galactic history. The Void Hunters opened with their traditional tactic, overwhelming firepower directed at the largest Federation vessels, expecting the fleet to break formation and scatter as they had in previous engagements. Instead, the Federation fleet did something that made the enemy pause in apparent confusion. They moved as a single organism. Battle Group Alpha, execute Pattern Morrison 7, Rodriguez commanded from the tactical station. Across the battlefield, Caraxian heavy cruisers suddenly pivoted in perfect synchronization, their massive weapons platforms providing covering fire as Thackeray assault ships launched from their bays. But these weren't traditional Thackeray boarding parties. Each ship carried integrated human Thackeray teams that had trained together for months. Direct hit on Void Hunter Capital Ship 17, reported the sensor officer. Their shields are adapting to our weapons' frequencies, but they can't adapt to this, Morrison finished, watching as the mixed-species assault teams breached the enemy vessel's hull. Inside the Void Hunter ship, Sergeant Bradley led a combined unit that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Thackeray warriors provided the heavy assault capability, their natural weapons carving through enemy defenses, while human tacticians identified weak points and coordinated attacks. Caraxian specialists handled technical systems, and Zephyrian reconnaissance troops provided intelligence. Team 7 reporting successful breach of enemy command deck. Bradley's voice crackled over communications. Void Hunter command structure is unlike anything we've seen. They're not just using our technology, they're using our command protocols. Understood, Morrison replied. Implement adaptive response protocol. What happened next demonstrated why human integration had been so successful. Instead of following predetermined battle plans, the mixed-species teams began improvising in real time, sharing information across the entire fleet and adapting their tactics faster than the enemy could counter them. Enemy formation is shifting, Dr. Petrov reported. They're learning from our current tactics and adjusting. Then we'll learn faster, Morrison said grimly. All teams, execute continuous evolution protocol. Across the battle space, something unprecedented began happening. Human tactical coordinators, working with specialists from dozens of species, started implementing new strategies every few minutes. As soon as the Void Hunters adapted to one approach, the Federation forces shifted to another. But the enemy was adapting too, and their resources were vast. Captain, Commander Velthak reported urgently, we're losing ships faster than we can replace them. The enemy fleet is larger than our intelligence estimated. Morrison studied the tactical display. They were inflicting significant damage, but the Void Hunters seemed to have endless reserves. Worse, their adaptive capability was accelerating. They were learning to counter Federation innovations almost as quickly as they were developed. Sir, Rodriguez said quietly, at current rates, we'll be overwhelmed within the hour. Morrison looked around the bridge at his mixed-species crew, then made the decision that would define the battle. All ships, implement final protocol. The communications officer looked confused. Sir, there is no final protocol in our tactical database. There is now, Morrison replied, turning to address the entire fleet through the communications array. All Federation forces, this is Captain Morrison. What we're about to attempt has never been tried in galactic history. We're gonna stop fighting like separate species trying to work together, and start fighting like a single species that happens to have different capabilities. He paused, watching as the Void Hunter fleet pressed their advantage, their dark ships seeming to absorb the light of nearby stars. Every human tactical officer is now authorized to implement species-specific modifications to combat doctrine in real time. Caraxian heavy weapons specialists, you're cleared to use human close-quarters tactics adapted for your physiology. Thrakkery assault teams, integrate human squad coordination with your natural hunting instincts. Zephyrian pilots, combine your aerial superiority with human ground support tactics. Captain, War Master Zethkar said from his position, what you're describing is impossible by traditional standards, Morrison agreed. But humans have never been traditional. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The Federation fleet suddenly began moving with a fluidity that defied conventional space combat doctrine. Ships that had been operating as distinct units started functioning like organs in a single body. Caraxian cruisers provided heavy fire support while Thrakkery assault ships darted between them like attack aircraft. Zephyrian scouts fed targeting data directly to human-coordinated weapons systems. But most importantly, the innovation rate accelerated beyond anything the Void Hunters could match. Enemy vessel attempting to adapt to our new formation, reported Dr. Petrov. They're implementing countermeasures based on our previous. Countermeasures are obsolete, interrupted Lieutenant Kim from the Auxiliary Tactical Station. Battle Group Charlie, execute improvisation pattern Delta 9. Sir, the communications officer said with barely concealed amazement, pattern Delta 9 doesn't exist in our tactical database. It does now, Kim replied. I just created it based on enemy response patterns from the last 30 seconds. Across the fleet, mixed species teams were creating new tactical solutions faster than they could be cataloged. A Thrakkery human boarding party developed a new breach technique in the middle of combat. Caraxian human gunnery teams invented targeting solutions that hadn't existed 10 minutes earlier. Zephyrian human pilot teams created attack patterns that combined the best of both species' capabilities. The Void Hunters, who had spent decades studying Federation tactics, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that was evolving faster than they could adapt. Multiple enemy vessels showing signs of confusion, the sensor officer reported. Their formation is becoming less coordinated. They're trying to process tactical innovations that are being created in real time, Morrison observed. Their learning algorithms can't keep up with organic creativity operating at this speed. On the main display, the tide of battle was visibly turning. Void Hunter ships that had been pressing their advantage were now falling back, their dark hulls showing damage from weapons combinations they had never encountered. Captain Morrison, came a transmission from one of the Thrakkery assault ships. This is Bladesinger Kriksta. Our mixed teams have secured 3 enemy vessels and are implementing immediate tactical intelligence, sharing with all Federation units. Morrison smiled grimly. Kriksta had been Rodriguez's opponent in the arena 6 months ago. Now she was leading integrated combat teams with the same humans who had defeated her. Confirmed, Bladesinger. Upload all tactical data to the fleet network immediately. Sir, Rodriguez reported, we're receiving similar confirmations from 17 other mixed species assault teams. They're not just defeating enemy vessels. They're learning how Void Hunter technology works and sharing that information across the entire fleet. The battle space was transforming into something that resembled less a traditional space combat engagement and more like a vast, distributed laboratory where dozens of species were collaboratively solving the problem of how to defeat an adaptive enemy. Enemy fleet is withdrawing, announced Commander Velthak, his voice carrying tones of disbelief. Pursuing, Morrison ordered. All ships, maintain formation and continue innovation protocols. But as they watched the Void Hunter fleet retreat toward the edge of the system, Morrison realized that something fundamental had changed. Not just in this battle, but in how the galaxy would approach conflict forever. "Captain," Dr. Petrov said quietly, "what we've accomplished here. This isn't just a military victory." "No," Morrison agreed, watching as mixed-species crews worked together with an efficiency that would have been impossible before humans introduced the concept of adaptive cooperation to the galaxy. "It's proof that the whole really can be greater than the sum of its parts." The Void Hunter fleet disappeared into hyperspace, carrying with them the knowledge that the Federation was no longer a collection of separate species that could be defeated individually. They now faced a unified force that could out-adapt, out-innovate, and out-evolve any threat. In the aftermath, as damage reports came in and casualties were tallied, the numbers told a remarkable story. Despite facing a numerically superior enemy with advanced technology, Federation losses had been minimal. The integrated tactics hadn't just worked, they had revolutionized space combat. "Captain," came a transmission from the flagship of the Federation Council. "Chancellor Rixandra sends her congratulations and a formal request for you to address the full council regarding the implementation of integrated combat doctrine across all Federation forces." Morrison looked around the bridge at his mixed-species crew. Beings who 6 months ago had viewed each other as exotic aliens, and who now worked together with the seamless coordination of a single organism. "Tell the Chancellor we'll be honored to share what we've learned," he replied, "but emphasize that this isn't a human innovation. This is what becomes possible when different species stop trying to fight like their ancestors and start fighting like their descendants." As the Nexus Defiant headed back toward Federation space, carrying the news of victory and the promise of a new era of cooperation, Morrison reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. It had started with a simple demonstration in an arena, for humans showing that their species was ready to join the galactic community. It had ended with the galaxy learning that cooperation and adaptation could defeat any enemy, no matter how advanced or numerous. The arena had banned weapons, so humans had used their hands. The galaxy had faced extinction, so humans had taught everyone to fight together. And in doing so, they had proven that the most powerful weapon in the universe wasn't technology or superior evolution. It was the willingness to learn, adapt, and grow stronger together. The ban on weapons in the arena had been intended to level the playing field. Instead, it had revealed that humans had never needed weapons at all. They had something better: the ability to turn any challenge into an opportunity, any enemy into a teacher, and any collection of strangers into a family. As the Federation fleet returned home victorious, the galaxy prepared for a new era, one where the diversity that had once been a source of division would become the foundation of strength that no enemy could overcome. The humans had kept their promise. They had used their hands. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy to reach for something greater than any species had ever achieved alone.